let's talk about sustainability, as it is in our program. It is not a small talk. It is a serious discussion, and more than that, it is call for action. We have heard what is happening, what is going on, what are the challenges. Right now, there is a hurricane in Bahamas, and there are 1 million United States 1 million people have been evacuated already. So we have heard about migrations. We never know who the next migrant can be. And last week, in one day, 10,000 fires were reported. So the world was burning. It was not only in South America, it was also in Europe, it was in Syria, in Africa. So all that is showing us how interdependent we are and how important it is that we really do collaborate and co-create solutions for tomorrow. So I'm more than happy and proud that I have 3 distinguished guests here with me, really the leaders of today and hopefully of tomorrow as well, who will join me here on the stage to discuss this very important topic. So I'm kindly inviting Dr. Andrea Ili, chairman of Ili Cafe, Dr. Janez Potočnik, co-chair of UNEP International Resource Panel, and Professor Jeffrey Sachs, director, Center for Sustainable Development of United States, to join me on the stage. Please take a seat. You're welcome. Please.
Pleasure.
Hot seats. Yeah. So to warm them up a little bit before we start with your not only discussion but also the speeches that you prepared, I would like to break the ice with one question for each of you, if you agree. So, and to connect everything what we have heard with what we are going to discuss here and now. So, Professor Sachs, you are one of the 100 most influential people in the world. You were nominated twice by Time. So it means that with influence comes also responsibility. I'm sure about that. And you said once that politicians do not do their job properly. Today we have discussed a lot about the politics, the role of politics, and I must say that there were more people when politicians were on the stage as right now. So this is also a sign that they are getting the attention but not doing their job. So maybe just to refer to that, where do you see the role of politics and politicians?
Thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, very honored to be here. I should have said most politicians don't do their job. There are a few that do, and we saw some of them today. But I'm coming from the United States. Oh, my God. So it's a completely different situation in the United States. We're trying to survive our politicians.
And even the weather now is...
yeah, well, it's not incidental. We have a psychopathic president, and which we do. I'm sorry to tell you, he's your ally, but don't count on it. And he has done everything possible to accelerate environmental ruin. And when environmental ruin hits, he's an incompetent, unfortunately, also. So thousands of people died in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria hit a couple of years ago. And then when he was told that, he said, "I don't believe it." We are literally trying to survive the worst president in American history. And now, he's the extreme. Most politicians are not Donald Trump, but most politicians are not technically competent to address the issues that the world urgently faces right now. This is a fundamental problem of politics. The issues of decarbonizing the energy system, which are really existential issues for the planet, require a very sophisticated extent of engineering and of other systems management. Our governments are generally not organized properly around such challenges. They're short-term, They're dealing with the short-term issues. They're looking for the next election. We have a 20 to 25-year deep transformation that is required, and it's being set on 1 or 2 or 3 month or year horizons right now. In the case of Donald Trump, it's set on a one tweet at a time horizon. This is really our problem. How do we get technical expertise into real plans in a system both of government and markets that are not used to dealing with issues like this? The answer is, I'll give you a punchline, it's feasible, but not the way that we're organized right now. So if I have another chance, I'll explain what I think should be done.
Absolutely. We will give you the word. But I will jump to Dr. Potocznik now, because what we have also heard now, we are facing here the situation in the United States. We know that we are very interdependent and connected. But what about Europe? You were the one who proposed, actually, the package for circular economy and for this transition. So can you say now what is happening, where we stand? Because we have heard a lot of what should be done, that we are waiting for like someone, but we are the one who are implementing changes here.
Yeah, we stand much better than at the beginning. There was waking up in the middle. So I think now the understanding, in particular in the business sector, it's improving very quickly. Some governments are also following suit, but there is no yet critical mass. But this is becoming now a global change, and I would rather talk about that a bit later and save some time.
Yeah, thank you. And we will jump to someone who is very much in business, in sustainable business. And what you said is, I would like to leave this company, Ely company, better than I found it. I guess that this is the message for everyone, not only for someone who is a CEO or who is running the company, but actually for everyone who has this responsibility. Can you give some comment on that? Because it is such a nice message.
Well, you know, the idea is to build a sustainable company to contribute to the mother of all causes, which is climate change, and to make our company carbon-free in 2033, which is our centennial anniversary. It's not only a joke. And with a circular soil-to-soil carbon cycle, so to sink carbon in the soil, and reputation-wise, and to preserve value. This should be, in my opinion, every business leader's goal, to build value over the long term, not short-term profits.
We come, to Professor Sachs and what he said at the very beginning. So as we agreed, now you have 10 minutes to give us your introduction on the topic we are going to discuss further on. So we can go in this direction, or we can split it in more parts, however you prefer. We are very flexible.
Let me say a few things quickly. We can elaborate on any of them. We face 3 profound environmental crises. One is climate change. The second is loss of biodiversity and ecosystem functioning. And the third is massive pollution. We can talk about any of them. All of them reflect fundamentally the fact that we have an enormous world economy now, 7.7 billion people, an average production of $13,000 per person. That's $100 trillion a year world economy. Plus one very unfortunate fact that is just a coincidence, and that is that carbon dioxide happens to absorb infrared radiation. So when James Watt invented the steam engine and Daimler and Benz invented the internal combustion engine, bad luck. The fossil fuels turn out also to warm the climate. Just an accident of quantum physics. So we are stuck right now with a world economy that is massive, with a desire, understandably, among developing countries, certainly, but even among our own rich countries, for more, and a planet that is absolutely right now at the edge of many kinds of collapse, 1 million species on the edge of extinction, a climate that has warmed already to a temperature that is higher than during the last 10,000 years of civilization, a level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now that is higher than at any time in the past 3 million years. The last time Earth was as warm as it is today, which was 115,000 years ago, the sea level was 8 meters higher than now. This means that we've already set in motion the disintegration of a lot of the Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets. Now, what to do? What to do is also actually fairly clear, and that is that we must change the energy system and the agricultural land use systems. On the energy system, the most fundamental point is that we need to decarbonize the energy system. And according to the recent IPCC report, if we're going to have a fighting chance to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, we have to do that by 2050. Why 1.5 degrees warming? 2 reasons. One, a lot of damage is happening at that level. We're only at 1.1 degree, and we have Category 5 hurricanes, the Amazon on forest fires, and all the rest. 1.5, much worse. But also 1.5 is close to tipping points for many feedback mechanisms. Loss of permafrost, which will release massive methane, drying of the rainforest. There are many, many extreme risks that we're already courting right now. So we need to decarbonize to 2050. Donald Trump should be irrelevant for this, frankly. He's an idiot, honestly, I'm sorry to say it. He's a complete ignoramus, and his views should count for nothing because 8 billion people are at stake right now, not some corrupt politician of the United States. We need to change how we're doing things so that we have a systematic approach that says between now and 2050 we're going to decarbonize the economy. Now, Europe, believe it or not, is more rational than the United States. Europe needs actually to do some leadership in Brussels. By Brussels, I mean a European-wide plan, not 27 separate national plans. Energy systems are not national, they are regional, especially renewable energy systems. Why should Slovenia have to have all of its energy from inside Slovenia? It shouldn't. It should be a grid. This is the most natural thing. But what is the problem in Europe? The problem, of course, is that you're not quite a union. But the world desperately needs Europe to be a union, especially with an erratic, unstable United States. Do not count on the U.S. for your security anymore. Honestly, I'm sorry to tell you. I know. I live in the United States. We have so many problems that if we're one day without a mass shooting, we're lucky these days. This is not a stable country for Europe's dependence on security, energy, foreign policy, relations with China, or anything else. Be Europe, please. I study the Sustainable Development Goals for the UN, and I write a report every year about who ranks at the top. It's all Europe at the top. I study where happiness is highest in the world. It's all Europe at the top. I study life expectancy. It's all Europe at the top. You have something wonderful in Europe. Protect it by having a unified Europe and having a plan of action. The Salvinis of the world and others who would wreck Europe are really your little Trumplets. You've got to get right now in a world of China, in a world of the United States, Russia, and others, Europe needs to be Europe. not 27 individual countries, not Boris Johnson. I have a modest proposal. When Britain leaves, it should join the US and Manhattan should join Europe. That's my proposal.
To do this exchange.
You get rid of the City of London, but you get Wall Street. And you will also tame Wall Street. And I want to live in Europe, but I live on 72nd Street on the Upper West Side. So it could be arranged, actually. But the point is the following. Please make a plan, not just a declaration, not just a law. And stop listening to economists. It's not going to come through carbon taxes and trading systems. It's going to come through a plan. Where is the power going to be generated? Where are the lines going to be built? When is the German automotive industry going to shift to all electric? These are administrative milestones that are needed. And I'll close by reminding you, we've had one success in the international environmental arena, and that was to get rid of the chlorofluorocarbons. The way that was done was not a tax on CFCs. It was not an emissions trading system on CFCs. It was the Montreal Protocol that said in 10 years we're getting out of CFCs. Okay, we can't do that with energy because the infrastructure is much deeper. We have to do it in 30 years. It has to be phased. It has to be rolling off the old infrastructure. We have vehicles that, hundreds of millions of vehicles that last for 15, 20 years. But we can't continue selling new internal combustion engines after 2030, say. That's a decision that the German automotive industry has to hear for it to be able to thrive in the world. And one final point. This will not work without close cooperation with China. China by itself can wreck the world climate. A Chinese leading official a couple of days ago said, you know, with the battle with the United States, this is delaying our decisions on decarbonizing. This is real, not a threat. If we enter a Cold War with China, as in the fantasy world of my idiotic president, the world will be incredibly dangerous, first of all, and it will never address the issues of climate change or anything else. So please, it is not true that China is our threat and you must side with the United States on this. This is trivial Cold War misunderstanding that's extremely dangerous and that will end up getting us all killed, I'm sorry to say, because we can't afford another confrontation of this kind in the world. So my recommendation is Europe make a plan and Europe address China to say, you have the Belt and Road Initiative, we will have our own strategy in the coming years for our own investment transition. Let's cooperate, but on one condition, and that is that your Belt and Road be a sustainable Belt and Road, not building new coal-fired power plants in Bangladesh and Pakistan and elsewhere, not new pipelines, but clean. They will do that. Europe has the leverage to help bring China along rather than to enter into a Cold War. If you follow Mr. Trump, we're all lost, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this encouraging message. Being an European is something what counts nowadays. But at the same time, what you emphasized was this systemic approach that is lacking. Collaboration, this is really radical collaboration, what you proposed with China and so on. So it is something what we were not used to. And leadership. Without leadership, it cannot happen. And I know that you all, not always, but very often say how important are the relations with the neighbors. And being here in Slovenia, in the country of just the right size, as we like to say, and with the only country with love in its name, so we have a lot of potential. So what to do with this love and how to collaborate better with our neighbors, as well as now with new European Commission, here from the viewpoint of Slovenia. Where do you see our opportunity, or how can we become even stronger? Because it's good to be humble, but it's also good to be ambitious in a way and to build something within this country, community, actually.
This is a wonderful country, and I was lucky to be here 28 years ago. I was thinking, as we had the presidents of Estonia and Slovenia, within a couple of months I helped Estonia make its kroon, and I helped Slovenia make its tolar. So it was two monetary transformations in a couple of months 28 years ago. Smaller countries can think more clearly. Politics is more normal. You don't have the fog of Slovenia becoming the global empire, which is what makes the United States mad. So you can think clearly. So I would advocate clear thinking as the main contribution that Slovenia can make. Of course, it's a part of a wonderful, look, I'm a complete Europhile. This is where the hope has to be. But I believe that Slovenia has shown that it can move quite deftly, it can move quickly, it shouldn't delay. It actually depends, by the way, all the countries in this area depend on Germany not messing this up, especially in the automotive sector, because this is so important. Yeah. And we will not have internal combustion engine vehicles in 2050. We just will not. So whose cars are we going to drive? Chinese vehicles? Or no vehicles, or great German, wonderfully engineered vehicles. So these are points that I think Slovenia can make. Yeah. But look, you've had a fabulous commissioner who was a pioneer on all of these issues. Yeah. It shows the intellectual leadership this country can make. So I would ask Janez. And we will give now Janez the floor, because he prepared more than just a reply to this question, but you have something what brings us.
I actually have a presentation which I wanted to share with you. It's an excellent opportunity that I would share with you some of the thoughts of the things which we are doing in the International Resource Panel, only if it will work. I have the reserve, which is always good to have, if it works.
This is technology, you see.
Yeah.
It doesn't?
No. When we were working before,
now we
somebody
need
will need
someone
to help.
From the technical stuff. Yeah. No artificial intelligence yet for this kind of things.
No. Just to say maybe the first slide, it's about what I'm actually doing now in my life. I'm co-chairing UN International Resource Panel. You have all probably heard about IPPC and IPBS. IPPC is dealing with climate change, IPBS with the biodiversity. We are dealing with the resource management, but we are kind of sister organizations. So we are science policy interface. And one of the areas which we will be dealing with, it's also basically, I will be talking about, it's also how the resource management actually influence on the area of migration, security, and so on. This is something which is currently in our pipeline. We do not yet have the results of those things, but you can expect them. But we have recently published a very important global resource outlook, and I will share with you some of the essentials from that outlook, because I think you are the right audience, and it's high time that in Slovenia, on this level, we hear the shortest story as we can.
Because we have to prepare a plan for Slovenia and for Europe. Yeah, so.
By the way, at 11 o'clock it was working, so I have high hopes.
Yeah. But even, if it doesn't work, we can maybe continue.
I think it's working now.
It is, okay.
Thanks a lot. Okay, these are the things which we have already accepted, so let me start the story in my own home country. Maybe you have heard our famous philosopher Slavoj Žižek saying a few months ago, it's clear that we are approaching the ecological and digital apocalypse, but we should not lose nerves. And he actually added the quote from Mao Zedong, everything under the heaven is in utter chaos. The situation is excellent. So let us see how this chaos actually looks today, the taste We got all used that the population growth will be approximately, so that we will be 9.5 billion in the mid of the century. What does that mean? It means that on the planet we will have in 1 year additional Germany, in 4 years additional United States of America, and in 9 days and 6 hours additional population of Slovenia. So everything that is happening in least developed part of the world. Second, few people own the same as the poorest half of the world. The richest 1%, it's more wealthy than the rest of the world. Back. We throw away 1/3 of the food we produce. More than half of the cities, which will exist in 30 years, have not yet been built. China used in 3 years more cement than United States of America in the whole 20th century. Climate change, you have heard. We have 12 years on the clock, but I'm really not very optimistic about that. Biodiversity, Living Planet Index in 60% fall of the species in last 40 years. In last decades, biomass of the mammals living in nature has been reduced for 82%. 1 million of plastic bottles are bought every minute. If drinking only bottled water, one consumes 130,000 plastic particles per year from that source alone, compared to 4,000 if you drink it from the tap. Finally, we are the first generation more likely to die as a result of the lifestyle choices than the infectious diseases. This is the utter chaos which we have created. For the first time in human history, we humans are living in a socio-ecological system of planetary scope. My father was still using a horse to travel from Kropa, where I was born, to Kran. And this is just 1 generation ago. Now we are more interconnected and interdependent than ever, which means that our individual and collective responsibility for how we are governing our lives and the world has enormously increased. Club of Rome has nicely put that we have moved from so-called empty world, which was dominated by nature, to a so-called full world, which is dominated by humans. In the empty world, labor and infrastructure were the limiting factors of our well-being, while in the full world, it is natural resources and environmental sinks which are the limiting factors. This is probably the most important slide if you understand it correctly. So the whole logic is everything you look through the state, impact, response, driver, and pressure. That's something which the logic of researchers is based on. When we talk about climate change, when we talk about biodiversity loss, pollution, we actually talk about state and impact, the consequences. Immediately, when we mention drivers and pressures, we talk about humans and human activity. Why IPPC and our work with resources, it's important? Because the way how you use resources, it's actually connecting economics with the consequences. And that, at the end, influences on the policies. And you have heard today 1,000 times migration. If you deal with migration, with the state and impact, then yes, then you build higher walls around your country, then you put more security at the entrance. But this is a fake security and fake solution. Of course, you have to deal with those problems. But if I paraphrase American president, European policy going to drivers and pressure should actually be Africa first. That's the only way how we can deal with those problems. But, as I said, economy is the question which we have to address. And also Jeremy said that quite clearly. If we look to development trajectory, so Human Development Index, it's on the horizontal X, which means more right you are, more developed you are. On the vertical X, it's ecological footprint. Higher you are, worse it is. Higher it's your footprint. The dots are the countries. The dots on the right, surrounded red, are European Union states. And the green corner on the right contains all the countries in the world where people are living well within the planetary boundaries. 0. So what happens in development is actually we first all move up, and when we face the problems, we start moving down. So the real problem today lies more or less in that we in developed part of the world have to show that we are able and ready to go down, because the others simply don't have the choice to go our way, even if they would want some. So there are no such resources existing. This is the Inclusive Wealth Index. Normally, as you know, we measure our well-being with gross domestic product. It has three components. One is production capital, the gray one, which is very close to GDP. The dotted blue line is the human capital, which was in the last 20 years more or less standstill. And if you look to the green line, it's natural capital, which actually depleted in the last a bit more than 20 years for almost 40%. These are the data of UN. It's not obscure. And the conclusion is very simple. The growth of GDP in the last 20 years and some was achieved on the basis of depletion of natural capital. So if you look to the market economy, you know that resources, that producers and consumers, apparently we behave rationally, even if this is the most irrational assumption I have heard. The price signals are coming on the market and the quantities are decided. What are the signals which we are sending? Production, financial capital, overvalued, over-rewarded. Human capital, undervalued, under-rewarded. Natural capital, not valued, not rewarded at all. If somebody thinks that from that we will get a balanced situation of economic, social, and environmental story, he or she should wake up. That will never happen if we don't change the economic signals, which basically means that something like that, done by European Environment Agency, where economic system would be the function of the ecosystem, it's absolutely essential direction in which we would need to go. And the major problem in that are actually environmental externalities, which are, some are saying, and I was hearing that message for years when I was a commissioner, you can't introduce that and that because these are additional costs for the business sector. By the way, my dear friends, these costs are existing. Only we deny them, we don't calculate them. They are paid either by the health system or in majority of the cases, they are paid by the next generation. And that's easy. Why? Because the next generation cannot complain. That's what we are doing. We are indebting the future generations rapidly and enormously. So let me come. So profits are privatized and costs are socialized, to summarize that. Resources in that story are basically the missing link. 12 out of 17 SDGs are directly linked to the resources. And one of the conclusions from IRP is also that trade-offs among various SDGs are of course existing, but if you want to handle those, the best way is through the sustainable consumption and production. So if you really want to change to eradicate poverty, zero hunger, good health, climate action, life below, it's not possible if we do not fundamentally change our economic system, the way we produce and consume. So let me just say that natural resources, as you know, have been in the human history always closely related to stability, conflicts, and wars. That we believe in the IRP that it will not be the shortage of resources which will really force us to change our behavior in the first place, but it will be environmental and health consequences caused by excessive and irrational use. China did not close 2,000 companies around Beijing a few years ago because they were unprofitable, because they were running out of resources. They closed it from a simple reason, because it was polluting, that production was polluting so much that the situation in the city becomes unbearable. And the situation globally is becoming unbearable. And the climate change, it's an obvious visibility of that. Natural resources and as you know, provide the foundation of the goods, services, and infrastructure that make up our current socioeconomic system. We talk here about biomass, metals, fossil fuels, and non-metallic minerals. And one conclusion from that report, I will do just 3, it's per capita material footprint from high-income countries. It's 13 times higher than from the low-income countries. How were the resource demand actually and supply moving in the last 50 years? 3 conclusions. First, global resource use has more than tripled in the last 50 years. Second, Per capita, it has almost doubled, which means that majority of that can be devoted to economics, not to population growth. And third, which is really astonishing, material productivity, which is efficiency of the use of resources per GDP, was increasing till the year 2000 and then globally start to decrease, even if it's increasing in all the countries. How is that possible? Because a lot of the production shifted from resource-efficient countries like Europe, Japan, Korea, to resource-less efficient countries like Indonesia, China, India. So it's a structural shift of production, which is actually causing that per value of GDP, we are using more resources today than 15 years ago. And second, environmental impacts in the value chain, if we look to them, to only resource extraction and processing phase, then there are again three conclusions which are possible from the research. 90% of global biodiversity loss and water stress can be related to that. 50% of the global climate change and 1/3 of the air pollution. That's not taking into consideration the use phase. That means that when you are buying your car, and if you are parking it for the whole life cycle, you have already created 1/3 of the pollution, because car needs to be produced, the minerals, everything has to be extracted, and so on. So the coupling concept, it's actually the logic which we try to follow in IRP. It means that we are not against future well-being and future growth, of course, defined in different terms. But it has to be absolutely decoupled from the resource use, and both should be decoupled from the environmental pressures. If this is not done, then we are in major problems. Circular economy, and that's the only slide about circular economy, should be actually seen as an instrument to deliver the decoupling. It should be seen as part of the bigger picture of economic, societal, and cultural transformation. Just one example from circular economy, and then I'm going to conclusions. You know the story of climate change. Majority of the policies are connected to energy and carbon management and energy. But imagine for a second that you live in a world when you would have abundant energy, cheap energy, all renewable energy, but growing population like you have seen before, and current system of production and consumption. So the same way of mobility, the same way we build houses, the same way we produce the food. Do you think that we have handled the problem of climate change? No way. So it's absolutely necessary that we look through the land management, water management, materials together with energy, and that we look it in that way. So just one example that you would easier understand what does that mean. Something which you know very well. It's mobility. The car, that's part in the middle, the red dot, the combustion engine, it's, by the way, extremely inefficient. The red dot is the only energy which we use officially for moving the people. The rest is actually lost. But even if we move from combustion engine to electric, hydrogen, or whatever, what is the real problem of the car? European car, according to statistics, it's 92% parked, 1% sitting in congestion, 1.6 looking for parking place, 5% we are driving, and even when we are driving, it's 1.5 person in the car in 5-seater, which means that the utility of the car today is 2%. So if you really want to talk about serious issues, for example, if you move from that to the shared mobility, we have calculated, it was actually done by material economics, I was in the steering, that you can reduce CO2 impact for 70%, total cost of ownership for 77%, and externalities for 74%. So don't think even to build larger roads around Ljubljana or to build larger roads inside Ljubljana. Rather, decide only one simple political decision today. In 15 years, there will not be allowed any more private car in Ljubljana. You will have all innovation and all solutions in 5 years. But that's how the policy should be done. To conclude, why and how? The challenge seems not to be one of inadequate scientific evidence anymore, rather it's the one of cooperation and implementation, complexity and scale of these challenges requires new forms of collaboration and more systemic approaches. We need more circularity, you have heard that a few times today, even in global governance. So we need more of sharing sovereignty instead of owing sovereignty. And indeed, European Union is the best example in the world, and we should be proud about that. If we do not somehow copy something like we have done in Europe, also globally, I know that multilateralism is a difficult thing, but if we do not go in better cooperation, I'm afraid that the real alternative is war and conflicts. So when we talk about Europe, Europe it's not only blue with yellow stars. Europe it's a rainbow. It's a blue for freedom and democracy. It's a red for social values. It's green for the protection of environment. It's yellow for the culture. We can hardly picture Europe as the center of the world, so we will not be G-free. But we should do everything that Europe remains the center of the dreams of all the people of the world. We should be there, G1. Ladies and gentlemen, transition to a more sustainable economy and society, it's unavoidable. Humans are supposed to be intelligent. It's high time to prove it. We have to fix a broken compass. So, yes, it will be difficult. The first not too serious answer was already given by Einstein when he was asked why we could manage why we were able to invent atomic energy, but we were not able then to manage it properly. He basically said, that's simple, my friend. It's because politics is more difficult than physics. So we should never forget that when we are doing the real politics. But I see real three major problems in practice on which we should concentrate. The first one is, while the challenges we face require deep systemic change and long-term thinking, we govern our societies, political cycles, public financial institutions, to a large extent also private companies, on short-term focus and logic. This inconsistency limits our ability for efficiency and action, and we seriously have to rethink how it's actually quite a problem of democratic systems, to be honest. Second, production and consumption systems are based on the logic of consumerism fueled by the quantity-driven profits and growth measured by GDP. GDP could best be explained by saying that one will not reach the goal by walking faster if walking in the wrong direction. So there is a lack of strategic identification, risks, and long-term, even mid-term, and risk management, and its clear lack of understanding what really matters for our well-being. And finally, a transition to a more sustainable economy and society will only be possible if it's just, fair, and inclusive. We have to make our societies more equitable, do more in the fight against poverty. Social unrest is growing even in the high-income countries, and it's high time to hear the echo of the streets and the voice of the frustrated young generation. SDGs should be the North Star guiding our policies and behavior. My proposal would be create a kind of intergenerational agreement, a program for the future generations which would put sustainability first. Greta Thunberg, it's not a symbol of an awakened young generation. She's a real symbol of a failure of our generation. And we should be ashamed that a 15-year-old girl should tell us what we all know has to be done. So, and circular economy, it's not a new concept. It's the oldest concept on the earth. All nature, it's organized based on the principles of the circular economy. Nothing is lost. Everything has its purpose. That is why it would make common sense to embrace it and finally start to behave accordingly. And in essence, there is only one question which we have to answer. Do we agree that humans are part of the nature too? So, if we have the real problem with answering that question, then we should ask my good friend, because I'm now 15 years old living in Belgium, the Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. When he was asked why he is speaking about himself always in a third person, he replied something like that. If one is such a genius like myself, it is very important to establish a healthy distance to himself. So humanity should establish a healthy distance to itself. And if still we don't believe that this is like it should be, then let's follow the advice of Professor McPherson from United States. if you think the economy is more important than the environment and health, try holding your breath while counting your money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess that this applause is showing us how much needed is this knowledge and this kind of insights. We have heard that we have to create this plan, but without this understanding, and I guess that that is what we are lacking, that we cannot plan things if we do not understand the context. Can you refer to that? Because we need this plan, and why can't we make it?
I think if you listen to the whole debates today, I think the idea which the ministry and Peter in the first place was behind to put the resource and the whole story, it's the crucial idea. You have also heard in the debates that we like to revert to the questions which are short-term, political, and so on. But it's really time that we start talking about the issues which are fundamentally important for our life, for our future. And I will not mention kids because everybody is mentioning them. Yeah. So I think having a plan about that, it's something like saying, let's have a serious strategic discussion and then we will know where to go. But I can tell you, I was 10 years in the Commission and we haven't had one serious strategic discussion in 10 years.
So therefore, I didn't like the title of our panel, Let's Talk About Sustainability, because it is not about talking, it's about acting. And now we will move to someone who actually is playing on this ground for now 86 years, I guess. Your company is already here, and it was born out of a dream. But it was born out of the dream, but it still exists, and you are doing good business, and you are doing business in a good way. So can you share your story with us now to wrap it up and to see what can be done, actually?
Thank you. So I will try to address the why, the how, and the what of sustainability for corporation, because I'm a representative of the private sector. So I feel sorrow about the skepticism and cynicism with which the New York Times and The Economist received this CO declaration last week or 2 weeks ago. And I will try to say two things which has not been written. So first of all, it's about building the society. If you consider that at least 3/4 of the production in the society and the GDP is made by the private sector, if you want to improve the society, who else should do it if not corporations? So per se, this should be already a good reason why corporations should be the strongest active in making the society more sustainable. But even if you look from the value perspective, which is the typical Wall Street one, and it's about value, not profits, like has been written. Value over the long term, so that means what you measure is net present value. Net present value is about two things, cash flow, and it's about the cost of money with which you discount. So in an ESG perspective, which is now environment, society, and governance, companies are obliged to report about ESG. Liabilities, if you are unsustainable, or the reputation damage, dramatically reduce your cash flow. On the other side, if you are unsustainable as a corporation, your cost of money incredibly rises. So by not being sustainable, a corporation destroys value in two ways, in terms of cash flow and in terms of cost of money. So the market is changing now. There is much more awareness, commitment, sense of urgency. So I really think that corporations should be the first mover. How? So first of all, don't confuse sustainability with solidarity, like has been done in these two articles. It's not about being charitable. This is beyond scope or out of scope of one corporation. The difference between sustainability, it produces values, whereas, with all due respect, solidarity consumes value or resources. And this sustainability should be strategic sustainability. What I mean, in a sense, that it is embedded in the business model. For us, if our dream is to offer the greatest coffee to the world, then of course I need to work hand in hand with coffee growers and help them elevating the quality of the beans they sell to us in a way that they really can get the best. And of course I have to pay them a premium. Of course I have to transfer them knowledge in order to do so. So this is what I mean as strategic sustainability. Of course, we shall consider that the view of the triple bottom line, the environmental, social, and economical sustainability are totally interdependent and intertwined. So we shall pursue the three of them. In our case, we pursue economical sustainability through the policy of shared value, which has been theorized by Michael Porter in this famous Harvard Business Review article in January 2011. We pursue social sustainability through the principle of personal growth, which is mostly about living in let's say, cultivating virtues. The old concept of eudaimonia, seeking happiness through virtue and about knowledge. And last but not least, sustainability from the point of view, environmental point of view, is about respect. So no pollution, zero pollution, no waste, and using only circular, let's say, models and reusable resources. So this strategic sustainability, besides the triple bottom line, should be, as has been declared by these CEOs, for all the stakeholders, not only shareholders. In our case, as a private corporation, the real owner of the company is the consumer, because he's the one generating the cash flow, which eventually is reinvested for growth. So consumers, customers, the talents, our employees in the company, our suppliers for the best coffee, the communities in general as pools for talents, and at the bottom of the pyramid, the shareholder, who is at the service of the corporation, shall not be squeezing the corporation for his personal richness, but he should serve. This is the philosophy. And of course, being circular, and I only think that sustainability can be built through public-private partnership. There is no way private corporation can achieve the goals without the support of the public sector and the other way around. So this is why we are very, very, very active with a significant organization like the United Nations in UNIDO for industrial development in the coffee growing countries, with the Italian Corporation, with the World Bank and others, in order to build this program. And last but not least, the what. What, in my opinion now, of course for our corporation, is sustainable quality. The two things go along. We don't have quality without sustainability, vice versa. I don't want to bother you 5 minutes with demonstrating that this is a kind of a theorem. But now, as has been said so clearly, the mother of all causes is climate change. Not only because climate change is devastating, but is eventually becoming irreversible and self-powered. So that means that will be the end. It's like a cliff. So we shall stop before we enter in the cliff. So there has been these ambitious goals by Paris. It's okay that people start heating up, that we shall be carbon neutral by 2050, which is 30 years ago. But people tend to forget that supposedly we shall peak all-time emissions in 2020, next year.
It's here. Yeah.
And I think we are dramatically late. We are not going to make this goal next year. So this is why the sense of urgency is very high, although I'm optimistic, because I think we are reaching the tipping point for the consumer engagement. Financial institutions are definitely preferring more sustainable investments, and also because the cost of renewable resources is becoming cheaper than the non-renewable one. Personally, as a scientist, because I'm a chemist by background, I've been working the last year, and I'm still working in order to finalize an idea of a virtuous agriculture which pursues a double benefit, environmental one, in a sense of carbon sequestration through organic carbon in the soil, which also make the soil more fertile and less dependent from agrochemicals. But supposedly, this better soil and better agriculture also produces foods with a health benefit. This will be also a scientific project about basically machine learning. So artificial intelligence try to identify all possible correlation between soil health and human health, which can be pursued through different, let's say, molecules present in our food. In order to do so, investment shall be, in our case, investment are made by growers in developing countries, because coffee is a tropical country, as well as tea and cocoa that we also produce. So that means that in order to support growers with investment, we did work a lot in the last years with the coffee community in order to develop a model for supporting and getting making growers access to subsidized finance by simply providing some collaterals and help them getting long-term credit with low interest rates so that they can invest in their plantations. So,
thank you very much for this. Yes, one applause. It is very good to hear that, how important corporations are, and that business is not detached from the whole concept of sustainability, of circular economy, and that actually companies are those that are bringing that. So we have this bottom-up approach in a way, and also, as we have heard, to encourage communities, citizens, and so on. And on the other hand, we absolutely need this leadership and everything the rest. So because we will have slowly to conclude, we could discuss, but what I like about this panel is that actually we have all the ingredients that are needed to put an action plan together. So what we have heard today is that within United Nations, they're lacking communication, they're lacking stakeholder engagement, and the third thing was implementation. So I guess that we are lacking that in Slovenia as well, on European level as well, and on global level as well. So by having such experts as you are, and all the knowledge, I think that what, I will quote you again, Professor Sachs, because I like your quotes very much. You said once that we are a very rich world, but not a very wise world regarding our wealth and knowledge. With all this wisdom, we are committing to the point of destroying our planet. So can we now conclude with something? What is next? What each of you would suggest to do to create this group of great minds to co-create this action plan that our civilization will survive?
Very timely. You have a new commission coming into office in the next couple of months. This is a crucial opportunity. I'm afraid the previous commission did not really do very much on this. We never heard Mr. Juncker even say sustainable development goals, I think, for 5 years. Mrs. van der Leyen has already said them and has already said that the European semester will be organized around the sustainable development goals. This also is very important. She has also said that within the first 100 days there will be a new European law for net zero by 2050. Andrea said something extremely important, which is that for ILI company to be able to do its job, it has to partner also with the public sector and with UN agencies, for example. And then he talked about the coffee community. He's a great leader of the global coffee sector, hugely esteemed and very wise. we need within the coffee community also a true community, because companies can't do this by themselves, one by one. Even if Illy can decarbonize its own company one by one, to make sustainability in the coffee region isn't company by company. It has to be coffee regions in the more than 40 countries that produce coffee. I'm extremely keen, as part of this planning, to bring organizations like FAO or UNIDO or other agencies and donors to put real resources in alongside the coffee industry. And this is another kind of partnership that's needed against a plan, against a strategy for how to reach zero. Europe is the place to do this. There's been such huge distraction in Europe, of course, the waste of time over Brexit, the waste of time over Trump, the waste of time over issues that are not even issues except in the crazy imagination of some people. This is the way that Europe not only can play a dramatic role for the well-being of Europeans, but also for leadership in the world. Don't be distracted. Be prepared to make a proper plan right now. The next few months are a wonderful opportunity. I think we should, if Bled would host us, we'll make the plan here. Otherwise, we camp out in Brussels and we really make the plan in Brussels. But this will energize the world. And Europe will find it has incredible leverage to help spur and inspire the rest of the world. Even let me just make a shout out for President Macron, if I might, when he said rightly to Bolsonaro, who is South America's Trump, if you continue this way, having the Amazon on fire, we won't trade with you. We won't sign this Mercosur agreement. And companies won't be able to buy from you also because they have their reputations. And that shocked the Brazilians. The overwhelming proportion of Brazilians want that foreign engagement, actually. That was shown in a poll that was just released today. They didn't side with their nationalistic president, but with Europe. Save the Amazon. So Europe has a lot of leverage, but not if it's disorganized. And this is really the time to get organized.
Thank you very much. I must say that I'm very in favor of walking the talk. So as the chair of European Platform for Circular Economy, we have a meeting with the Commission in October, and we will propose something, and everything is recorded, so I will use the opportunity to refer to you and to bring the message, and I would like to add 2 other messages, because then we have something to show in Brussels. So, Mr. Illy, what shall we say? What will we do?
Well, I think we shall definitely raise the level of awareness of the SDGs. People are not aware of them. This is very important because it will influence the way people behave. Because when we think about an individual in the society, he's at the same time a worker, a consumer, and a voter. And most of the time also a father or a mother, you know. Mm-hmm. So that really building awareness is important. And I think we need more leadership, you know, stand up and really be serious about reaching some practical goals, because I like what you said before. Let's do sustainability, don't speak about sustainability.
Thank you. Janez, you are very experienced in Brussels, so with your help, we will do that.
No, I already mentioned what I think is crucial. If we would start working like something program for the future generations, we would show that we understand what is happening on the streets, that we take those considerations seriously. we would also show that we understand that the messages which are coming from the streets are exactly the messages which are aligned with Sustainable Development Goals to which we have all committed. So, in short, take seriously what we are saying. It's not a computer game.
It's not virtual.
No, we need a kind of a critical mass, so all who are sitting here in the room, do not wait for the leaders. Be the leaders yourself. And you will really see how good is the feeling if you are on the right side of the history.
Thank you very much. At this very point, because now we have a big thing ahead of us, and I believe that we will do that, but we cannot do that if we sit in our comfort zone and if we are not ready to do something for the very first time. And now I will stand up and tell you that we have a special occasion today because Mr. Ili is celebrating his birthday.
Oh.
And being with us on this very special day is giving us the opportunity to show that we are ready for a radical collaboration and to jointly sing a song, Happy Birthday. Please, let's do that. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andrea. Happy birthday to you. So, happy birthday 3 times.
Congratulations, all the best.
Thank you.
Voilà.
Thank you very much. And I believe that with this positive energy, we will contribute to the positive change. Thank you.
The final